Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, one and all. Everybody out there, you're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And before we start the show today, I've got to talk about my raised garden. Months ago, I did a segment on building, a raised garden bed. And I talked about all the different reasons that you should want to do that. And then I told you that I had built one. And I think we're going to revisit this topic in the next few weeks because really, to do it the right way, you would build it now, in the fall. And that gives you a lot of time before spring to work the soil over in your bed and make sure it's perfect. So we'll talk about that in a few weeks. But quickly this morning, I did that in the spring, talked about it on the radio, and it was beautiful. A perfect little raised bed. It was neat and trim. And then we planted several tomato plants in there, and then we waited. It just looked like a storybook. It was perfect. Well, flash ahead. Apparently, the soil in that garden bed, that raised bed, is so much healthier than any of the soil around my home that I have tomatoes literally coming out of my ears. The tomato plants have overgrown the bed so dramatically. I kid you not, they reach 6 feet or more in each direction over the bed. It's like a rainforest in there. We have to go in with machetes when we want to try to harvest some of the millions of tomatoes that are present there. Have you ever been nearly destroyed by your success, by just sheer, raw, uncontrollable success? Well, that's where we're at. That's where the Hansons are at right now. We almost need to open a roadside stand or maybe a grocery store. I've never eaten so many tomatoes in all my life. Anyway, it's crazy, and I wanted to let you know. Raised bed gardening, it's an adventure, and we'll talk more about that in a week or two. And you can do the same thing at your house. All right, on the show today, I've got a ton planned. We're going to end the show with our yearly discussion about fall painting weather. What are the rules for painting outside this time of year? I'm going to go over all of that so you can get as many outdoor projects accomplished as possible without making any big mistakes. I'm also going to be in the studio with Ali Bryde from Mustard Seed Beginnings, and we're going to be talking about a wood floor refinishing project that Ali tackled in her home. It was a huge project, and there's a big payoff at the end, and we'll get into the whole thing. We'll talk about all the ups and downs, everything she did coming up in a little bit. But right now, let's jump in to the paint point for the week, and I've got to put, my serious face on for a minute, my serious, sappy face. I don't know where you are at right now, but I want to give you a little window into my mind. Buckle up. It's early. I know that, and that might sound kind of threatening, but don't worry. It's probably not going to be as bad as you expect. Anyway, here is what goes through my mind on a daily basis. And I guess before I get into all of that, very quickly, I want to throw out this caveat. I know already, right off the bat, I know that not all of my thoughts are rational. They're not all healthy, and they're certainly not all helpful. But this is the reality. It's what I think about whether I like it or not. So with that said, here's what goes through my mind daily. Groceries, the rising costs, right? That's insane on its own. What meals can I make this week that are new, different, maybe even exciting? I'll just take new or different at this point. Coming up with new meals, man, that is a mind-blowing experience for me. Then, there's the dogs. Probably time for a vet visit. I get the little card in the mail. We've got to get the dog there. I got to get both dogs there, and I know that's not going to be cheap, so that plays in my head. The kids. Man, do I think about the kids. Got 5 kids, think about them all the time. I've got a daughter who's engaged now, recently engaged, and as a parent, that brings out a lot of mixed emotions, right? Excitement, of course, but, there's a ton of unknowns, and I don't like unknowns. I like to have everything kind of mapped out for me. I like to be told what I'm going to experience, how I'm going to like it, and all of those things ahead of time. And I don't get a lot of that with some of these things. So all of that's on my mind. I think about the other kids. I've got a couple kids in college. One will soon be entering college. And I wonder, are they on the right path? Did I give them enough guidance? Did I help them? Did I give them too much guidance? Did I steer them in a direction that maybe I shouldn't have? Who knows? My goodness. So many different things to think about with that. Then I've got work that I think about. Of course, we all think about work. Did I do a good job? Did I drop the ball on that? What's going to happen? Won't. Who knows? All of that's in my head. And then on top of all of that, I make the mistake of looking at the news, right? Global problems, national issues, local issues. It's overwhelming. With an election on the horizon, anxiety, it's pretty much everywhere. It's in the air. It's omnipresent, and it's there for everybody, no matter what your political leaning is. There's a lot of anxiety out there. And let's not even talk about the house. I've got projects everywhere I look. I think that's why I've been talking about it for the last 3 or 4 weeks. That kind of sentiment has been playing through, and it's because it's constantly in my mind. I just see all these things that I should be doing, rooms that need attention, things that need to be fixed. But the truth is, I'm struggling to find the energy to do it. And all of that is in my brain. I'm sorry. It's the truth, though. And when I talk to people, a lot of other people, it seems like a lot of us are in similar mental places. And that brings me to something that I've been kind of noticing lately. And it's more than just a paint point for the week. It's something bigger. What's missing in my life right now is beauty. And I kind of really wish that Haley was here to help me talk this through, because I think she'd be great at helping me pull the best out of this. But since she's not here, I'm going to wing it. I guess I've been starting to realize that so many of the things that I dwell on, I've been realizing this probably recently, over the last month or so, but so many of the things that I'm dwelling on, groceries, work, world problems, all of those things are in some way ugly. They're stressful, they're heavy. And in the case of world events, they're really genuinely ugly. There's a lot of ugly out there, and it's taking up way too much space in my mind. What's missing is what I said earlier. It's the beauty. And here's the interesting part. I really think this is really fascinating. We all know beauty is subjective. What's beautiful to me, it might not be beautiful to you. It probably isn't in some ways. But the fact that we all need beauty in our lives, that's not subjective. That's objective. That's true. It's real. Beauty can bring about joy. It inspires creativity. It helps us feel secure. It calms us. It centers us. It reminds us, I guess what I'm trying to say, it reminds us that there's more. Capital M, more. Whatever you're dealing with right now, beauty reminds us that there's more to life than just that. Now, what you find beautiful, well, it's subjective. It's up to you. It could be anything: music, art, landscape, architecture, nature, hunting, fishing. Maybe it's literature. Maybe it's poetry. Maybe it's relationships or good conversations, religion and faith, God. It could be anything. But whatever it is, go and find it. Go find the things that are beautiful in this life, and then spend more time looking at them and thinking about them than you do the ugly and the negative and the stressful and the concerning. And while I know that sounds like nothing more than a bunch of feel-good positivity, I really think there's more there. Beauty, real beauty, is a powerhouse, a powerhouse concept. Throughout the entire history of civilization, beauty, that's really what propels us forward. The ugly and the negative, they don't inspire people. They don't energize, and they don't propel, at least not in a lasting, meaningful way. It's beauty and the search for beauty and the desire to preserve, what's beautiful. Those are the things that inspire us. So how in the world does all of that tie into paint? Well, I really don't want to get too commercially here, but the reality is paint is one way to bring beauty into your space. The colors you choose, the atmosphere you create, they reflect what's beautiful to you. And when your home does that, when it reflects what's beautiful to you, it really does become a sanctuary from the chaos of the world around us. All right, that's the paint point for the week. It's simple. Find what's beautiful to you and then give it the space it deserves. Even if it's just a room or a corner of your home, it matters. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be digging into a floor refinishing project. That's all coming up next. Stick around. Welcome back. You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And right now, I'm joined by Ali Bryde from Mustard Seed Beginnings. Ali, glad you could be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
So Mustard Seed Beginnings, you've been on the show a couple times, but just remind people.
Yeah, so I share DIY interior design content across social media platforms.
All right, so you do all kinds of different projects, and recently you jumped into a pretty big one: sanding, staining, staining,
Yep.
Refinishing your hardwood floors.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that project. And let's just start at the beginning. How big of an area did you end up redoing? And what inspired you to take this on in the first place? It's a new house, right?
Newer. So it's about 20 years old.
Okay.
So it's newer. We're
New to you.
New to me, yes. So we moved in October. I think the carpet was original. There was a couple carpet patches in the office and then living room space that were just really tired and ready to be replaced. So we decided instead of replacing with carpet, we were just tying in old hickory floors that were already existing. So we had new hickory floors installed, which then, of course, you have to refinish them and make them all match.
Okay.
So we did. It was factory finished floor, the original hickory floor that was there, and it was ready to be redone anyway. About every 20 years, you really should redo your floors, 10 to 20 years. So anyway, yeah.
Wow.
It was a lot.
Okay. I didn't know you were trying to patch the two together.
We did. We hired someone to do that, and he did a great job. But then, we decided to save a little money and do the rest of it ourselves.
All right. So that kind of gets me through this next question. I was curious about the condition of the floors. So the floors that were existing, the hickory floors that were already there.
Yeah.
They were, like you just said, kind of in need of...
They were tired. I mean, they just shown a lot of wear and tear on the floor. And so the factory finish that was on there was starting to peel up and bubble and just not look great. You could see a lot of sun damage in different spots. And like I said, you really should resand and kind of restain your floor every so often when you have hardwoods, just as maintenance.
So you've got that going on. You're looking at all of that. How did you prepare for, I'm a planner, and sometimes I never leave that stage. I live in the planning stage, which is its own fault. I mean, that's a big problem. But how did you prepare for this? That's a major job.
It's a major job. This is our second time we've done this. The first time, nothing prepares you, really, when you're living in a house, because the last time we didn't live in the house, and this time we did. So I didn't plan. We're a little more spontaneous. We just jump into it and figure it out as we go. But it was interesting.
All right. Okay. So
we have a big Bernese Mountain Dog that we were taking in and out of the basement window. We were living in the basement area. There was a little kitchenette down there, so it was okay. It worked out well. But the window was our door for 3-4 days while we were doing the poly, and it was a process.
My goodness. So you didn't do a lot of planning and preparing ahead of time? You just kind of jumped in?
We just kind of jumped in. And we were really at the mercy of when the installer could come and start. So that was about a week process for them to install the 2 rooms. And then he also did our staircase going upstairs. So they were there. And then it was kind of once they decided they were coming, within maybe 3 or 4 days. And then it's kind of you just figure it out.
So pulling the carpet, you guys did that yourselves?
We did.
Did you do that way ahead of time, or did you do that when you got the phone call?
When we got the phone call,
what was that process like?
I always love that. Yeah, it came up really easily.
I was
it really
being sarcastic.
did. Oh,
okay.
no, it wasn't terrible. Jordan did it. I can't say that I did it.
Okay.
He did it. And I watched.
The carpet, I don't think, was so bad. Then you ripped out all the tack strips around the edges.
Yep, we did. And that came up really easily, too. So, and I say that from coming from a 1940s house because it was always a little more difficult, because material's different or whatever, and this stuff came out pretty easily. It's pretty straightforward. It was the only carpet that had been there. So it's not like you're messing with different layers or whatever. So it came up and there was plywood and, you're not looking at 5 different layers of floor.
Yeah. All right. So you got all of that up, everything ready to go. The guy comes in, installs the floor, and marries it to the existing.
He does. He did a great job. Yep. And so it just flows really well. We decided we have a double-facing fireplace and then, hardwood floors on either side from the living room. And we decided to leave. There was a vertical piece or horizontal piece of wood floor there that we decided just to leave because otherwise labor-intensive to take some of that stuff up and tie it in so it's cohesive. So we decided to leave that just for labor-wise, and that made it go a lot easier, too.
So you have him come out ahead of time he's got to scope it out, right?
He did. He came out, maybe 3 months before. And then he is, in high demand and does a lot of larger homes. So he usually is on a project for several weeks. So it was just our job was small to him. So it was just kind of where he could piece us in at.
All right. So he gets it pieced together. And then you've got the process of sanding it. You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, and I'm in the studio right now with Ali Bryde from Mustard Seed Beginnings, and we're talking about a wood floor that Ali recently sanded, refinished, had installed, and then did all of this. So now you've got the new floor installed. Your old floor is there now. Everything's kind of married together. Now the sanding starts, right?
Yeah, the sanding starts. So the new floor that they installed was unfinished hickory. And again, so the old floor was pre-factory finished hickory, which you can buy. It's still hardwood. It just is finished somewhere else. It's not finished on site. And so what we didn't realize and what our contractor tried to tell us, which I'm a little stubborn, I'm like, I can do it. It's going to be easy. He's like, just so you know, this may be really difficult to get off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we've done this before. It'll be fine. But then when we rented the sanders and we started sanding, I immediately called him within an hour because it started burning. Like it smelled like it was burning and it was black. And so he came out and he's like, I tried.
It's the finish on the floor, right?
Finish.
It's it used to be an aluminum oxide. I don't know what it is
I don't know either.
But it's really, really durable. Those pre-finished.
It is. Yeah.
So
that means it was really hard to get off. And he was right. It kind of like burned the first couple layers and it smelled horrendous. It was kind of like black and patchy. And I'm thinking like we have ruined these floors. This is not good. But it did come off. I think it took us, we sanded for a week, like 7 days. We sanded.
And you had what kind of equipment did you rent?
We rented the push-behind sander, like a drum sander. And then we had I don't know what it's called, little edging sander, but it's big. It's probably, bigger than a basketball. And you go around and do the edges. And then we also had to use, my husband used, what's it called? It's like a tool. It's not to get in the corners. That was our biggest hassle. In the corners, instead of going around with the edger that's round, you have to get in that triangle, which is difficult. So we had to kind of rig a few things up to
make that work.
To make it work.
And now that we rent out, maybe you don't know, we rent out that on-floor machine that's made to...
Oh, no. Dan.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I didn't know you were doing this until by the time I realized you were doing it. See, Ali works with me. We've gone back and forth. We talk about all these different projects. You're using products from RepcoLite, which we're going to get to. And by the time I realized what you were doing, the sanding was over.
Oh, bummer.
And I thought, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to be hand-wringing. I'll wait till I can say it on the radio and record your reaction.
That's a bummer.
Everybody to hear.
I'm sure that's a good one, right?
Right,
that on-floor
The way the
awesome.
on-floor machine works is you can control it with one hand.
Yeah.
With what you're doing, it's a fair amount of control. I mean, you've got to really rein that machine in that you rented.
Yeah.
This thing is just super easy. Walks over the floor. It's got a vacuum attachment. There's no dust.
Oh,
on the west
where were you?
I was here. You had moved too fast. You were too prompt. You jumped right in.
Yeah, we did.
You'd have done your planning.
No, I'm not good at that.
I know.
We just moved.
So anyway, if you're doing this project, there is perhaps an easier way than what Ali did. It's a rental. I'll put links in the show notes or information in the show notes. Otherwise, just email me, radio@repcolite.com. It's on the west side right now, west side of Michigan. We don't have a way to, conveniently transport that to the east side for you guys out there listening. But west side listeners, we definitely do have an option that might be easier than
that would have made my
worked.
job so much easier.
It really would have. Like I said, once I
now.
saw you were into it, I thought there's not much I can do at this point. Ali, looking at the clock and thinking ahead, doing my planning, I'm thinking that we should probably take a break right now and then finish this conversation on the other side. Does that work for you?
Sure, of course.
Perfect. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take that break. When we come back, we'll talk about the application of the stain, the application of the finish, and most importantly, we'll get to the end results of the project, what you thought of it, and would you do it again? We'll get to all of that in just a minute. Stick around. And we're back. You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And right now I'm in the studio with Ali Bryde from Mustard Seed Beginnings. And Ali was here with me in the last segment, and we started talking about a project that she tackled around her house, a big project. She refinished some hardwood floors. Basically, had some hardwood floors down in some areas of the house. They were kind of tired. They needed some refreshing. She had carpet in other areas. She pulled the carpet up, had new hickory hardwood floors installed and married together with the existing floor. Then she undertook a sanding process to get all of them down to the same point, down to bare wood that she could stain. And that's where we're at right now in the process, right? You guys got everything sanded.
We did. And we did, like I said, sanded for a week, and we did multiple different layers. And then we were ready to stain. So we actually used RepcoLite stain and sealer. We chose Walnut, which I feel like is the perfect classic color. It doesn't, you know how some browns can kind of pull orange or they pull a little dark. This one is it's literally perfect.
So you were using Finisher's Touch.
Uh-huh.
It's basically a relabeling, a new branding of a product that we've had for years and years and years. So Walnut, you're mentioning how some browns will go this color, that color, orange, whatever. A lot of that's determined, by, it can be the color of the stain, of course, but it's also the color of the wood.
The wood, yeah.
How did you make sure you were going to get what you wanted?
I did a ton of sampling, yeah.
Did you bring samples into the store?
I did.
You didn't sample on your floor?
No.
That would have been really, really
We
bad.
had some extra, hickory floor that I brought in, and then the guys at the 17th Street location was super sweet and put all my samples out, and then I was able to decide which one that I wanted.
Yeah, so definitely, again, if you're in a process like this, maybe best case scenario, it's a good scenario for you. You've got extra scrap pieces. If it was just refinishing floors that were down, now it's a little more complicated. But you actually had some scrap pieces you could bring in. Bring those scrap pieces in, because the wood really is probably the biggest determinant of what that color is going to look like. Because, oak trim, for example, I've seen that, years back when we did tons of that. But if the oak is redder, whiter, the same stain on different pieces,
it's going to look different.
You would never guess it's the same stain. So you did all of that. You checked it out, made sure it looked good.
I did. I kind of let the traveling piece of sample wood, go around each room so I could really decide, see the different lighting, and make sure that it was the perfect color, and it really was.
So you ended up with Walnut.
Yep.
Talk about the staining process itself. What did that look like? How'd you pull it off?
So, like I said, we're living in the basement. So it's like a whole situation. But yeah, so the Finisher's Touch stain is actually a little bit thicker. So I feel like it was less mess.
You were using a wiping stain, which is a thicker stain. There is a penetrating stain version, which is just a slightly different application, way thinner. You ended up with the wiping stain. So nice, easier to work with.
It was easier to work with. And we applied it with a sponge and then wiped it off with a cloth. So I did probably 3-foot sections where I would apply, I'd go back and wipe, and then kind of continue on in little sections.
And you didn't have problems with patchiness or anything like that?
No.
You were able to blend it all together?
I did, yeah. And I moved pretty quickly. Which I shared on social media. But
okay, and we'll post links to that, and we'll talk about where people could find that so they can check it out.
Yeah.
In fact, since you're talking right now, if they want to check it out before you finish up the interview, how do they find it?
Oh, sure. So you can go to Mustard Seed Beginning on Instagram, Mustard Seed Beginning on Facebook, and then I also have a blog, which will the blog post for the flooring will go live later this week. So it's mustardseedbeginning.com.
So check that out if you want to see some of these pictures along the way. So you do your staining. Did you even remotely run into, I stained myself into a corner kind of a moment?
No, I didn't.
Nothing
but
like that.
I do have to say, we did have one bad thing that happened. So I
love bad things. Lay it on me, Ali.
So when you're sanding floors, it's really difficult, especially with this floor. It's really difficult to make sure all of our heavier grit sandpaper that we had to use to get all that floor off, or the factory finish off, didn't still leave those sanding marks.
Sure.
So I sanded an entire room. It looked great. Backed up. We came back the next day. Again, we're living in the basement. Went downstairs, came back the next day after it was dry, and realized that there were some vertical, things going against the grain in a diagonal.
After you stained it,
After we stained it. So we have to go back and rent the drum sander again to do it. We took all the stain off. That was a very sad day.
That's a bummer.
That was a big bummer. It took us, a few days and set us back a little bit. And yeah, I definitely cried.
I was going to just ask, were there tears?
There were tears.
All
yeah.
Right. So a little drama along the way.
Just a little bit.
So you got that stain on. After that,
after that, we did it again, and it was wonderful.
Wonderful.
After that, it was perfect.
Looks great.
Yep.
And then you get to the finish. What did you pick? Again, Finisher's Touch.
We did Finisher's Touch in a oil-based matte. So the reason we got away with using the oil base, usually it would yellow over time, but because we chose walnut, it's a darker stain. The oil base gave us a harder finish. We have a Bernese Mountain Dog. We have 3 boys and, lots of traffic in and out of the house. So I really wanted to make sure that I had something durable, and oil base was the way to go. It's very stinky.
Yeah.
Not going to lie.
Nope, there is that. You got to get those windows open.
Oh, we had all the windows open. The kids went away for a few days, and we did 3 different coats, lightly sanding in between. And it was a process. It was a lot.
So you went with a matte.
We did.
How come not a satin sheen?
I didn't want any sort of shininess on my floor. I wanted it completely matte.
It's one of those tricks, or one of those things, I think it's becoming more and more of a thing is to have that matte finish. I mean, even the factory finishes are coming out with a matte, which is, it seems strange at the beginning when we made that shift, but they've got the finish to the point where it's really durable, even though it's a matte. I guess the best way to say it is it's just like paint on your wall. A matte on the wall is not going to wash up quite as well as the next sheen. But you've always got to make that determiner. Where do I go with this, and how shiny can I tolerate? And the satin sheen is going to give you a fair amount of shine. So
I know, and it's one of those things like on my floors I want matte, but I am all good on satin on the walls.
Oh, so you like satin on the walls?
I do like satin on the walls.
Well, you went with the flat on the floor, the matte on the floor. The oil-based product, you said it's not, it naturally yellows just a little bit. And in some instances, that can be, a negative. It depends on the color of the stain.
It does.
But with a darker stain, and it honestly, with a lot of different stains, it depends, I guess, on the color. But the deepening of it, that ambering of it, really gives a very rich, beautiful look over time.
Okay.
So that yellowing isn't always a negative. It can be if you're trying to touch things up, but with a stain, you're not doing a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think I was a little more hypersensitive to that only because the factory finished floor had yellowed a lot.
Was it a darker color?
It was not. No, so it was almost like I want to say it was almost like a natural.
That's where it
color.
Really shows up.
And then it was very some spots, was more natural, and then it was really darkly yellow and kind of looked a little dirty. Just like I said, it was tired over wear. And so I was like, anything not to yellow. Don't want anything yellowing.
No, if you're looking for, if you had a natural color on the floor and you're going to clear coat that, honestly, your best bet would be to go to a water-based varnish at that point. And the water-based technology for varnishes, we've got one that will hold up just as well as that oil-based will. It takes probably 1 extra coat. It doesn't build as quickly.
Okay.
So 1 extra coat, but it won't yellow. So that's what you get with that.
That's really nice.
If you've got a darker stain, whenever I do anything like this, if I've got a darker stain, I always go with the oil for the application. I like the application of the oil a little better.
It does. It kind of smooths itself out. We applied it with a big brush. And, you're like a little worried at first, like, is this going to, you see your brush marks, and then it just all kind of self-levels, which is nice.
No,
yep,
I like the leveling,
finish.
and I like that yellowing a little bit when I've got a darker color. If I've got something natural, definitely want to keep that in mind. So application, you mentioned it a little bit. You applied it just with a big brush? Did you have anything else that you used?
No.
Great big brush. Sat on the floor and...
Yeah, sat on the floor, brushed it all out. We thought about doing, like a roller, but really I wanted to make sure that our coats were quite thick. Just to have more control over the application.
All right. So how long did that take you to get around the room? Yeah, okay.
There are
tricks that you can use and employ to maybe speed that along a little bit.
I went to the chiropractor a few times after that.
Really?
I did.
Wow. So this floor has taken its toll on you.
It really has. Mentally and physically. No, I'm just kidding.
So about how long did the whole process take?
Oh, gosh. Over a month.
Over a month. That's really not that bad,
It
though.
seems awful. Only because
You're living in the basement.
Yes.
From my point of view, it seems like it went pretty nice.
Yeah, except for we're living there. And like I said, the first time we did this in our old house, we were young. We were newly married, and we didn't live there yet. We bought the house, and we did the flooring before we moved in. And so I just was... I don't know. I had the skewed perspective that it was going to be super wonderful. And it is wonderful. The end outcome is worth it. But living with kids and your animals in a house while you're redoing the main area of the flooring. We had to, like I said, go through the window. It's just is so disruptive, way more than I anticipated. And I'm a bit of optimistic too, so I usually look at things in like a very positive perspective. But I think I should have probably been a little more pessimistic about this project.
See, I'm almost 100% pessimistic, so I never start a project.
Yeah.
But I need a balance. You need a balance as well.
Yeah.
And then we'll be fully functioning human adults.
Yes.
So Bernie's mountain dog.
Yep.
Right?
His name is Maverick.
Bernie's mountain dog.
Yep.
Named Maverick. How shaggy is a Bernese mountain dog?
They're quite hairy.
How did that play out with the oil-based taking so much longer to dry? Did you end up with hair?
I did not.
In the finish.
Thankfully.
You should check it out. Get on the floor and look closely.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
I have, yes.
Good deal. So you survived that.
I did, yeah, somehow. And we, again, left him in the basement.
Yeah.
And so, we had fans going. The windows were open. So, I don't know.
In the right season so you can get those windows open.
Yes, and that's why we wanted to do it in the spring, which ended up being the summer. But,
It always shakes out that way. So knowing what you know now, would you undertake this project again? Would you recommend it to others? Would you hire it out? How would you handle it?
In the middle of it, we're like, we should have hired this out. But thinking about how much money we saved, because we did quote it out to how much it would be. And
how much do you think you saved? People will be very curious about that.
$8,000.
Oh, well, see that. You can suffer through a lot of things for $8,000.
Yep. I just kept telling them I'm saving $8,000.
That's 3 weeks worth of groceries.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Or more. $8,000.
So, would you recommend it to other people?
I would. I feel like if you are optimistic and you are able to put in some grit, then you could do it. But I would say move out. I wouldn't live there again. If I had all my ducks in a row, we would have just moved out. It wasn't in the cards in that moment.
Where would you have gone for a month?
We would have just, I don't know, got a hotel. That's the thing. We don't have family around. So it's not like we could just go live with, in-laws or Aunt Susie down the road, But yeah, I definitely would have probably moved out.
All right.
Even during the poly stage to the hotel. But again, but then we have pets. So it's it's so multifaceted that you can't just, it's not an easy thing to do.
No, I think it just comes back to $8,000. You know?
You could suffer through a lot, like you said, for $8,000. Yeah. And that was a lot. But they would get it done in 3 days. And so we did go back and forth. And we decided, you know what, we're going to do it. And if this really sucks, then we're just going to suck it up and hire it out and it'll be okay. At least we tried.
You love the end result, though.
Oh, yeah. It's perfect. I would do it again.
All right.
I would suffer through again.
So what's next on Allie's list of things to do at your home?
Well, right now I'm painting. Go figure. I'm painting up our stairs. We are going to be doing our office. So when we did the floors, there was all built-ins in the office. So we ripped all of that out. Now there's some holes in the wall that we got to patch. We're going to do bookshelves and make it like a little library. So that's going to be like a winter project.
All right. Well, I think when you do that and accomplish that, check back in.
Yeah,
we'll
sounds good.
Project.
Do you have any tools that I could use that make it really, really
I'm
easily?
Wait until you're done, and then,
tell me all your secrets,
and then I'll let you know what you could have done easier.
There you go.
That's my way. It's a position of power.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Makes me feel important. If people want to see, we already gave it out, but give it out one more time. If people want to see photos, videos, any of that stuff, where do we find you?
MustardSeedBeginning.com. Mustard Seed Beginning on Instagram and on Facebook.
All right. Ali Bryde from Mustard Seed Beginnings. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I apologize deeply about the floor
I am mourning.
that I didn't let you know ahead of time. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the fall painting window. When is it too late to be painting outside? We'll get to all of that in just a minute. Stick around. And we're back. You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And we're already to the last segment. We have just zipped right through that episode. And yeah, I've saved the best for last. We're going to talk about painting outdoors in the fall. So buckle up. Get excited. It's the big time. Seriously, though, as we do head into fall, temperatures, they're going to drop. Even though it doesn't sometimes feel like it. I don't know that they ever dropped last year. They did. They dropped, but I think they plummeted. I think we went from 80s, felt like all September long, to about 40 degrees and rainy in the middle of October. I don't know exactly when things went, but the kids and I were talking. That's what last fall felt like to us. Hopefully this fall is fall. Hopefully we get to enjoy a Michigan fall and get some nice, great, 60-degree weather. Sweatshirt weather, football weather, chilly weather. If you like chili, hopefully you're going to get the weather to enjoy chili. Anyway, I don't know what I'm even talking about. Let's talk about painting outside. When you're painting outside and the temperatures have dropped, the atmospheric conditions have changed, there really are some concerns that can crop up, some things that you want to be aware of as you're trying to wrap up some of these exterior projects. Now, fall is a great time to get these projects finished. It's a lot nicer to work outside when the weather's in the 60s or the 70s, but painting in cold weather can lead to issues like color uniformity problems, peeling, and even the paint not forming a proper film. And then when you add a bit of moisture, like dew or rain, well, you could be looking at all kinds of things like surfactant leaching, bubbling, water spotting, and on and on and on. Lots of potential issues that nobody wants. But of course, there's good news. That's exactly pretty much the only reason this show exists, is to dish out and dole out good news on a weekly basis. And the good news here is that, of course, you can have great results painting outside. You just need to keep some things in mind. And we're going to zip through them. First, let's talk about temperature and weather. Ideally, I already mentioned it, that you'd want to paint in the mid-70s with low humidity. That'd be perfection. But that doesn't always happen. We don't always get perfection. We don't always get what we want, but sometimes we get what we need, right? It's the Rolling Stones. Again, where am I going? Don't know. There are low-temp exterior paints for those low-temperature conditions. In fact, pretty much all of the exterior water-based products that we carry at RepcoLite, whether it's a RepcoLite paint like Endura or a Benjamin Moore product, all of them can handle temperatures down to about 36 degrees or so. So that's really good to know. But that's not just air temperature that we're talking about. The surface temperature is also critical. You've got to keep that in mind. And it's really not surprising. Just think about it. A dark surface in direct sunlight, that can easily be hotter than the air temperature is, right? The surface temperature can be hotter than the air temperature. And a shaded area, that might be cooler than the actual air temperature is. So even with these low temperature paints, both the surface and the air temperatures should ideally be above 40 degrees or so for at least 24 hours after painting. I know the cans say 36 degrees, but if you want to give yourself like the really safe, ideal rule of thumb, go with 40 degrees for at least 24 hours after painting. So pay attention to the temperatures when you're working, but also keep an eye on the weather. Ideally, if there's rain in the forecast in the next 24 hours or so, it's probably wise to hold off on painting unless you're going to use Benjamin Moore's Element Guard. Now, Element Guard, it's a newer product, and it handles the low temperatures just fine, like all the other ones, but it also offers extreme early moisture resistance. In fact, its big claim to fame is that just 60 minutes after application, if it rains, you're good. That's pretty much a game changer for those unexpected showers that we do get in the fall. Element Guard, it's like having insurance, really, against weather surprises. It's reasonably priced. And honestly, amongst all the other great products out there, Element Guard really feels like the ideal paint product for spring and fall painting projects because of that, that early moisture resistance. So keep Element Guard in mind when you're painting. So watch the temperature, watch the weather. Now let's talk about the painting window, the times that you should be painting and when you should wrap things up each day. Now, this is going to vary, based on the weather and the temps, but a good rule of thumb is to start painting mid-morning once the dew is evaporated and then finish in the early afternoon. That should give the paint time to dry before the temperatures drop later in the day, and you should be good. Now, a few last tips when you're painting outside, just very quickly here. Keep your paint at room temperature. If it's been sitting in a cold garage, it might be too thick to really use effectively until it warms up. So keep it stored inside at room temperature. That's going to help you out. Also, while you're, painting outside or getting ready to paint outside and you're keeping your eye on the weather, don't forget about the wind. Windy conditions when you're painting outside, that can really blow. Literally, it can blow. You can end up with dirt, leaves, dust, all of that in your freshly painted surface, and that really stinks. It's tough to control when it's windy, but, if it's significantly breezy and you're getting ready to start, might be better to just pause and wait a day If you've got a lot of material around your project that could be blown into it, might be wise to wait a day. But keep an eye on the wind. That's something I always forget. Anyway, there you go. With the right paint and a bit of planning, fall can really be a great time to get that exterior painting wrapped up. Now, if you do have any questions or you need some product recommendations, just swing out to any RepcoLite store. We'll be happy to help. And that's going to do it. That's all the time we've got. Whatever you do today, make sure paint's a part of it. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week. I'm Dan Hansen. Thanks for listening.